the South American Indians of the Andes recognize UFOs as brothers from the sky who have always been there, who are there today. They are not any more unique than an airplane, an airliner flying overhead with passengers aboard. To them, the brothers from the sky have always been there. They do make contact with the Indians, and they do treat people in remote areas where they cannot get to doctors. They heal them, they treat them medically, they interact with the Indians and with primitive people, both in the high plains and in the deep jungles. So when we began asking about these brothers from the sky, we discovered stories about these such contacts everywhere. And in the course of one of these stories, we were introduced to an Indian from the upper Amazon. I think his name was Akunta, but I'm not sure at the present time, who offered to take us back into a civilization that he came from that was primarily based on a European culture that was transported there or transposed there sometime about the end of World War II. And they had taken scientists and scientific research underground in an area in the upper Amazon where they had succeeded in developing disc-shaped aerial vehicles that they could use to go all over the world with. The society was, this Indian called the society Akakor. He said that he had guided a German researcher by the name of Brugger, and I think his name was Martin Brugger, B-R-U-G-G-E-R, who was actually taken to the city and was afforded an opportunity to meet with some of the Europeans there. That Indian tribe in that area has many blue-eyed, blonde-haired Indians, and they appear to be descendants of a Germanic a group of people that were taken there sometime in the middle 1940s. And now they have produced children and they are young adults, and a society is flourishing there that is advanced over the contemporary societies around them by a substantial degree. We can take you back there. There is a man who lives in that area. His name is A.J. Gaviard, who will be willing to introduce us to either the Indian that guided Martin Brugger or other Indians from the same tribe who may be willing to take us back far enough to meet some of the members of that society. It's operated as a closed society. They do not come out down the river and enter Western civilizations. When they come out in their spacecraft and pick up what they need and take it back into the society, and they live in a closed environment, pretty much protected by the wilderness of the jungle itself. So it's possible to go back and further investigate the evidence of the existence of Akakor at any time. We can produce people who can do this. We can look at Mr. Brugger's evidence that he published, which was the result of his own research. But I personally am convinced that this society exists, that they have circular disc-shaped craft, that they fly and operate them there, and perhaps some of the disc-shaped craft that we are discovering in the reports of the Indian aboriginals of the highlands, the upper plateau there, may be some of the vehicles from Akakor. We also know that many of the vehicles that they describe are not from Akakor, that they come from elsewhere. Some of them are extraplanetary. They come from beyond this planet, and they have unique technologies, and they have human beings aboard who are quite different and quite advanced over the contemporary humanity of Earth today. These humans are interacting with the natives down there also, and there is substantial evidence that these extraterrestrial races are directly connected with the earlier civilizations of Tiwanaku, of the Olmecs, of a number of the other earlier civilizations in South America at a time before the last cataclysmic disturbances that changed all the society and reduced it to savagery once more.
A further expedition was sent to the South Pole, Expedition Schwabenland, in order to find the land with no ice and to explore the access to the inner Earth. Another expedition was sent to the Icelandic geysers, since there were insider stories about the access to the inner Earth. And another expedition was organized by Sven Hedin to the Taklamakan Desert in Tibet in order to find traces of the old culture of Urd.
What we call in the Buddhistic esoteric tradition as Shambhala is an actual area in the Taklamakan area of central China next to the Gobi Desert. In 1988, with permission of the Chinese Academy of Science, I conducted research experiments in this area and confirmed with other engineers the existence of a vast underground complex of grottos, ancient structures and buildings. And in these structures we find statues of the avatars or beings later celebrated in Buddhism as the bodhisattvas, the beings that came from space, and the Vimana and the Tathagata. These are ancient Sanskrit terms for the vehicles of higher intelligence. In my opinion, Shambhala does exist as an underground structured civilization that is now being uncovered in Central Asia. And in this area of the Gobi, I believe we will find the origins of the Garden of Paradise, or the Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden as it is referred to in our book of Genesis.
One less-known expedition was led to a mountain in an African desert, since there were stories by the local tribes that there existed a network of caves out of which flying objects emerged, which had also been cited by the German expeditioners. Under the cover name Villachmina, all the information about the technology of the inhabitants of the inner Earth, or extraterrestrials, was gathered, and through the SSE-4 was passed on to the engineers of the weapon industry in order to develop the new technology. The flying saucers from Agartha were the result of this scientific research. The Nazis made contact with the extraterrestrials of the underground city of Antarctica. They received technical support and instruction for building flying saucers with levitation drives, similar to those used on Venus. At the end of the Second World War, the extraterrestrials ensured that the technology was returned from Earth back to these cities. They understood that the Dark Age had not yet reached its peak. The technology was returned by 30 submarines through a large commando action.
Okay, let's pick up the scenario. We were originally talking about the spiriting out of the two spacecraft out of Berlin before the Allies arrived. We said that they were put aboard two submarines. They spent 6 months at sea, and they finally landed in Argentina. Now, from that point, they were taken into Antarctica, into a section of Antarctica called Queen's Maud's Land. And there they disappeared, and they were not heard of for some time. Now, intelligence sources, and of course I was in the intelligence business at that time with the agency, reports indicated that they were in there and they were operative once again. Now, there was a major concern by world powers to go in and capture the technology and the two spacecraft which they knew were in Antarctica. And the intelligence reports indicated that one known as Admiral Byrd was to be recommissioned, and he was to be sent in there to retrieve the two saucers and also the technology and personnel associated with it. Later reports indicated that Admiral Byrd was given 8 months and unlimited funding to go in and pull this thing successfully off. But we also know that within 8 weeks he was totally defeated. Now, the supposition at that point was that there was an advanced civilization and technology, most probably alien. They were with the Third Reich and the SS who was in Antarctica, and that those great and developed technologies were used to defeat Admiral Byrd. And of course, as it turns out, even to date, they're still there. We never did successfully get them.
The stories that I've uncovered about the inner Earth is that very early on in the history of the Third Reich, the Nazi elite, and especially Hitler, were trying to establish contact with a civilization living in the inner Earth, which was considered an Aryan civilization of a lot more advanced nature than their brothers, lost brothers living on the surface of the planet. The Tudor society carries the name of the former capital of that civilization, someplace around present-day Greenland, before the previous polar shifts and before Greenland became under ice. 2 expeditions were made in the late 30s, early 40s, one attempting to enter the North Polar water opening with a submarine, which proved unsuccessful. A second attempt was made to enter the land opening on the South Pole with an anti-gravity cigar-shaped device, basically a small prototype probably of the giant Andromeda space station that was developed later on by the SS, and it proved successful. The most interesting story is the one that I heard by an American living in Florida who claims to have spent 2 months in the city of New Berlin. This is a city that was developed into the inner Earth, and a part of the Germans from the South Polar colony were admitted by the inner Earthlings and were allowed to build that city there. Very strict admission procedures, no previous SS members, no previous concentration camp guards and so on were admitted. The rumor is that the present-day city of New Berlin is about 2 million people of population, that they have built there most of the buildings that Hitler's personal architect, Spee, was planning to build. They're traveling on Icelandic passports. They are basically the new master race that is probably planned by the Illuminati to repopulate the planet. And there is even a rumor that there is a New Berlin embassy in Washington on an unmarked floor of a high-rise building. You probably punch a code on the elevator buttons, and when the elevator stops on that floor and the doors open, you see the sign of New Berlin in the lobby. The kids of the New Berliners study in major institutions around the globe, Harvard, Oxford, Cambridge, Yale, and basically it is not a Nazi colony that is established in the hollow earth as an enemy of the present-day American and English Illuminati secret government. On the contrary, it is just basically the other side of the same coin. Some would even coin the new word, the Illuminati presence on the planet, that basically the World War II Nazis and the present-day Illuminatis in America are nothing more than the two sides of the same Illuminati coin. So basically, this is a colony, a presence in the hollow earth that has been established with a shoulder-to-shoulder cooperation of the Russians and Americans, organized, orchestrated, and